simply because they know it is the right thing to do, at work and at home, within and across communities. Alongside the personal grief that all my family are feeling, we also share with so many of you in the United Kingdom.
The silence was broken just moments ago. A statement, brief yet heavy with sorrow, emerged from behind those iconic gates. 4 words that carried the weight of a nation's heartbreak. Palace officials, usually composed and measured, delivered news that sent ripples across the globe. Something has unfolded within those royal walls, something that has left the world holding its breath. The question isn't just what happened, but how did it come to this? Behind the grandeur and tradition, a deeply human story has been unfolding, one that reminds us that even crowns cannot shield against life's most painful moments. Stay with us as we uncover what led to this tragic development and what it means for the future of the monarchy, the king who carried more than a crown. Charles had never been one to seek the spotlight, yet it followed him relentlessly. To the world watching from afar, he appeared as a figure of ceremony and duty, a man born into privilege, destined for a throne. But those who knew him, truly knew him, saw something different. They saw someone who spoke to the flowers in his garden as though they were confidants. They saw a man who worried endlessly about the planet, about the future, about whether his life's work would matter once the final chapter was written. He was a walking contradiction. Royalty on the outside, but something softer, more human on the inside. A man who carried duty not as a burden thrust upon him, but as a sacred promise he'd made long ago to something greater than himself. His mornings began before the sun stretched its light across the palace grounds. Sleep had become something fleeting, something that danced away the moment he reached for it. On this particular morning, rain drummed against the windows with an insistence that felt almost deliberate. He rose slowly, feeling the familiar ache in his joints, a reminder that time moves forward for everyone, regardless of title or birthright. The palace around him remained wrapped in its early morning quietude, the usual bustle of staff and officials still hours away. This was his time. The only truly private moments in a life lived perpetually in the public eye. The study welcomed him as it always did. The scent of aged leather mingled with the faint aroma of yesterday's flowers, still fresh from the gardens he tended with his own hands. He prepared his tea alone, a small ritual of independence in a life where independence was rare. Steam rose from the cup like morning mist, and for a moment, he allowed himself to simply exist in the quietness of it all. There was something almost meditative about the process, the simple humanity of it grounding him in a way that royal ceremony never quite could. Papers covered his desk, letters, reports, documents from the charities that bore his name and his heart. For decades, he had poured himself into causes others dismissed as eccentric: environmental conservation, architectural preservation, sustainable farming practices. These weren't hobbies to fill royal hours. They were missions, pieces of a legacy he hoped would outlive the crown itself.
The country whose title I've been so greatly privileged to bear during so much of my life and duty.
Each letter represented a connection, a cause, a passion that burned quietly but steadily within him. He'd spent his entire life building these bridges, pouring his heart into work that others had once mocked as the obsessions of an out-of-touch royal. But to him, they were everything. Among the papers sat an unfinished letter to William. Not official correspondence, but something more personal, more vulnerable. He wanted to share the wisdom that only experience teaches, the lessons of carrying a burden few can understand. But every time he tried to complete it, the words felt insufficient. How do you capture in sentences what it means to serve, to sacrifice, to find purpose in duty when duty demands everything? The letter remained incomplete, trailing off mid-thought as so many of his personal reflections did these days. Tomorrow, he thought. as he had thought countless times before. I'll finish it tomorrow. His eyes fell on a photograph at the corner of his desk. Camilla smiled back at him, surrounded by children and grandchildren, all caught in a moment of genuine happiness. He felt his expression soften, a warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with the tea growing cold in his cup. Despite everything, the scrutiny, the judgment, the years of waiting, he had found something real, something true. The discomfort arrived without warning. A sharp sensation crossed his chest, quick and uninvited, like a visitor who hadn't knocked. His hand moved instinctively to his ribs, pressing against the sudden unease. It passed almost as quickly as it came, leaving only a faint echo behind. He dismissed it with the same stoicism that had carried him through 70 years in the public eye. There was too much to do to pay attention to every complaint his aging body voiced. But the discomfort returned, and this time it was different. No longer polite, no longer patient. It was insistent now, sharp and demanding, refusing to be ignored. His vision blurred at the edges. The room seemed to tilt slightly, reality becoming untethered from its moorings. The teacup slipped from his hand, falling in what seemed like slow motion. He watched it tumble through space, the remaining tea arcing through the air like a liquid amber ribbon. It shattered against the floor with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet study. Papers scattered as he collapsed forward, his body surrendering to forces beyond his control. The pen rolled away, leaving an incomplete sentence trailing across the unfinished letter. Outside, the rain continued its steady rhythm, indifferent to the crisis unfolding within those walls, when the palace doors opened to silence. Camilla had perfected the art of composure over decades of living under the world's harshest microscope. She could walk into any room and command it with nothing more than presence. Not because she demanded it, but because she had learned that warmth made you vulnerable. And vulnerability, in her experience, gave people permission to hurt you. She had worn her armor so long that most people forgot there was a woman underneath it at all. Staff members passed her in corridors with their eyes lowered, never pausing, never engaging. She had learned to give them exactly what they wanted, even though it meant walking through life somewhat alone, even while standing in full view. But that afternoon, when she pushed open the heavy oak door to the king's private study, everything changed. The room looked exactly as it should, books lining the walls, afternoon light slanting through tall windows, dust particles drifting lazily through the air. Everything was in its place, except for him. Charles sat slumped in his chair by the desk, his hand resting on papers, fingers still curled as though he'd been mid-thought when the world simply stopped making sense. "Charles," her voice came out smaller than she intended. She took one step forward, then another, her heels clicking against the wooden floor in a rhythm that sounded too loud for what was happening. "Charles, are you—" But the words died because she knew. Even before she reached him, even before she touched his shoulder and felt how heavily he leaned into the chair, she knew. The air in the room turned to glass, fragile and about to shatter. Her mouth opened to call for help, but nothing came out at first. Her throat had closed entirely, seized by a fear so profound it stole her voice. When the scream finally tore free, it sounded like someone else entirely. "Help! Someone help us!" The response was immediate. Footsteps thundered down the corridor. The door burst open and suddenly the quiet room filled with people. Physicians in dark suits carrying leather bags moved with practiced efficiency. The private secretary appeared, his face already drained of color. Guards spoke urgently into radios. Camilla stepped back, pressed herself against the bookshelf, and watched as they descended upon him. Someone checked his pulse. Another loosened his collar. A third pulled equipment from a bag with the kind of efficiency that comes from years of training. She wanted to do something, anything, but her body had forgotten how to move. "Your Majesty, we need space to work," one of the physicians said, looking up at her with kind but firm eyes. She nodded, mute, and let someone guide her toward the door. but she couldn't stop looking back, couldn't stop watching them work over him with terrible urgency. The door closed between them, and she found herself in a side room. Pale blue walls, a painting of horses, a clock ticking somewhere. She sat down because her legs would no longer hold her. Her mind tumbled backward through time. She remembered the first time she had made him truly laugh, really laugh, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes and made him forget the weight he carried. They had been walking through the gardens, and she had said something about the chickens. She couldn't remember what, but she remembered the sound of his laughter, warm and surprised. She remembered the years when loving him felt like standing in the middle of a hurricane. The papers had been merciless. The public had been worse. But Charles had stayed. Even when it would have been easier to walk away, he had stayed. And slowly, something had changed between them. The sharp edges softened. The desperate quality of their early years together settled into something quieter, something that felt like peace. The door opened. A physician stood there, his face carefully neutral. "Your Majesty, we've stabilized him for now, but his condition is critical. We're doing everything we can." She nodded, found her voice somewhere deep inside. "May I see him?" "In a few moments. We're still working." Outside, she could hear the palace coming alive with terrible purpose. Phones rang in distant rooms. Footsteps hurried through corridors. Guards spoke in low, urgent voices. The machinery of monarchy was already moving, preparing for whatever came next. Camilla sat with her hands folded in her lap and felt the ice inside her begin to crack. She had spent years being strong, being composed, being the woman everyone expected her to be. But now, alone in this pale blue room, she felt something break open inside her chest. She was not ready, not for the empty chair across from her at breakfast, not for the silence where his voice should be, not for a world that continued without him in it. The heir who wasn't ready to become king. William had always carried himself with warmth that softened the edges of royal formality. Behind the titles and duties lived a man who loved deeply and worried quietly, who carried the weight of expectation without complaint, and who had learned through personal tragedy that life could change in a single heartbeat. He knew better than most how quickly joy could turn to sorrow, how a normal day could transform into a nightmare in the span of a phone call. That Tuesday afternoon began like any other. Autumn light filtered through tall windows as William reviewed correspondence in his study, occasionally glancing at photographs of Catherine and the children scattered across his desk. The house felt peaceful, almost sleepy, with only the distant sound of gardeners working outside breaking the comfortable silence. Then his phone rang. The voice on the other end was controlled, but urgent. Palace, medical emergency, his father. William felt something shift inside his chest, as if the ground beneath him had suddenly tilted. Time seemed to slow and accelerate all at once. He stood frozen for what felt like minutes, but was probably only seconds, his mind struggling to process words that didn't quite make sense, yet somehow made terrible sense. Within moments, he was moving. Keys, coat, security details scrambling. The drive to London became a blur of gray motorway and racing thoughts. He remembered being a boy, watching his father from a distance, never quite understanding the man who seemed always preoccupied with important matters. There had been years of distance between them, years when duty and tradition built walls that love struggled to climb. But time had softened things. Recent months had brought conversations they should have had decades ago. There had been forgiveness, though much of it remained unspoken, living in the space between words. William pressed his forehead against the cool window glass, watching the countryside blur into suburbs, then into the city. He was caught between two versions of himself. One was simply a son, terrified of losing his father. The other was the heir, the future king, already feeling the invisible crown settling onto his shoulders with crushing weight. He didn't want to be that second person yet. The car pulled through palace gates that had stood for centuries. William's hands trembled slightly as he stepped out into the courtyard. Everything looked exactly as it always had, yet nothing would ever be the same. Camilla stood outside the heavy oak doors leading to the king's private chambers. She looked smaller somehow, vulnerable in a way he had never seen her. No makeup could hide the redness around her eyes, or the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. They stood facing each other for a long moment. No words came because none seemed adequate. Their eyes met, and in that silent exchange passed years of complicated history and shared terror. She reached out and squeezed his hand briefly before stepping aside. The corridor felt impossibly long. His footsteps echoed against marble floors, worn smooth by generations of royals who had walked these same halls toward their own moments of crisis. As he approached the door, he paused, hand on the brass handle, taking one more breath before stepping into whatever waited on the other side. The room was dimmer than he expected. Heavy curtains blocked most of the afternoon light. Medical equipment beeped softly. Royal physicians stood in quiet consultation near the window. And there, in the center of it all, lay his father. The king looked terribly small in the large bed, surrounded by white linens and pillows. This man who had always seemed so imposing, so permanent, now appeared fragile as autumn leaves. William approached slowly, hardly breathing. He pulled a chair close and sat, then reached for his father's hand. The skin felt papery and cool. He held it gently, carefully. "Everything will be fine," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You're going to be fine." But even as he spoke, he tasted the lie. Nothing felt fine. His phone began vibrating in his pocket. Messages from palace aides, from officials, from people already preparing for what protocol demanded. Statements being drafted, announcements being planned, the machinery of succession already grinding into motion. He shoved the phone back without reading any of it. Not yet. He wasn't ready to be that person yet. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time had lost its usual meaning. William sat holding his father's hand, occasionally speaking soft words of comfort, watching the steady rise and fall of labored breathing. Later that evening, they discovered a sealed envelope bearing William's name in his father's distinctive handwriting. William had tucked it into his jacket pocket earlier, unable to face it in that moment. Now, in the quiet of their private sitting room, Catherine placed her hand gently on his knee. "Perhaps now is the time," she said softly. He finally opened it with careful fingers, extracting several pages covered in his father's handwriting. The letter was simple, direct, achingly personal. Words about kindness in a world that often valued strength over compassion. Reflections on patience, on taking time to truly see people. A father trying to distill a lifetime of lessons into a few pages, knowing these would be his last words to his son. William began reading aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. Halfway through, his voice cracked and broke. He paused, struggling to compose himself, but Catherine's hand tightened over his, silently encouraging him to continue. When he finished, he carefully refolded the pages. Neither spoke immediately. The fire crackled and popped. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling through ancient trees. They sat together as the night deepened, hands clasped, shoulders touching. Tomorrow would bring all the machinery of state mourning, but tonight they gave themselves permission to simply be human, to grieve, to hold on to each other while the world outside prepared itself for what was to come. The moment that changed everything. For centuries, the palace had stood tall and unmoved, a fortress of marble and tradition, a keeper of secrets, a silent witness to the rise and fall of monarchs. It had watched coronations and funerals, weddings and wars. But nothing in all its long memory had prepared it for the weight of this particular morning. Inside the communications room, the air was thick and still. Senior aides sat hunched over desks, their faces pale under fluorescent lights. Secretaries moved quietly, their usual chatter replaced by something far more solemn. Papers were shuffled. Words were typed, deleted, and typed again. Every sentence mattered. Every comma carried weight. They were writing the announcement, the one no one ever wanted to write. One woman pressed her fingers to her lips as she reread the draft, her hands shaking. Another man stared at the screen, his eyes glassy, as if hoping the words might change on their own. But they wouldn't. The truth was the truth, and it sat there on the page, cold and final. Down the hall, past portraits of queens and kings long gone, the doors to the king's private room remained closed. They had been closed for hours. No staff entered. No press was allowed near. Only family, only doctors, only those who had earned the right to be there in the end. Inside, the light was soft. The curtains were drawn, not to keep the world out, but to keep the moment sacred. The air smelled faintly of lavender and old wood, of medicine and memory. It was quiet, save for the slow, steady rhythm of breathing, fragile and fading. Camilla sat at the bedside, her posture perfect even now. She had always been strong, always composed, but today her shoulders carried a burden too great to hide. Her hand rested over his, fingers curled gently around his palm. She had held that hand for years, through laughter and scandal, through public doubt and private devotion. And now she held it one last time. William stood beside her, tall and still as a statue. His face was unreadable, carved from something harder than grief. He didn't move, didn't blink. His jaw was tight, his hands clasped in front of him, as if holding himself together by sheer will. The doctors stood near the foot of the bed, their expressions somber and practiced. They had done this before, too many times, but it never got easier, not when the life slipping away belonged to a king. And then, in a breath so soft it barely stirred the air, it happened. The king took his last breath. It wasn't dramatic. There was no gasp, no final word, just a slow, gentle exhale, and then stillness. A stillness so complete it seemed to swallow the room whole. For a moment, no one moved. No one dared. Then quietly, one of the doctors stepped forward. He placed 2 fingers against the king's wrist, then his neck. He waited. He checked again. And then, with the kind of solemnity that only comes from bearing unbearable news, he looked up and gave a small, slow nod. The king was gone. Camilla's breath hitched. A single sob broke from her chest, raw and involuntary, and she covered her mouth with her free hand as if to hold the rest inside. Tears slipped down her cheeks, silent and unstoppable. She didn't wipe them away. She just sat there holding his hand, because letting go would make it real. William closed his eyes. His chest rose and fell, slow and controlled. He didn't cry. Not yet. Not here. But his hand moved to rest on his father's shoulder, just for a moment, as if to say goodbye in the only way he knew how. Outside, the palace flag began to lower. It moved slowly, inch by inch, pulled by hands that had done this before, but never wanted to again. The fabric fluttered softly in the breeze, sinking toward half-mast like a final curtain falling. People on the street stopped and looked up. Some gasped. Some cried. They didn't need an announcement. They knew. Back inside, in the communications room, an aide lifted the printed statement from the desk. His hands were steady, but his face was not. He walked down the corridor, past the guards who stood at attention, past the portraits that seemed to watch him go. He reached the king's private study, where William now stood alone by the window. The aide knocked softly. William turned. Without a word, the paper was handed over. William took it. His eyes moved across the words, slow and deliberate, as if reading them might somehow change what they said. But they didn't change. They never would. It is with deep sorrow that Buckingham Palace announces the passing of His Majesty, the King. His vision blurred. The letters swam together, dissolving into smudges of black and white. He blinked hard, forcing them back into focus. His hand reached for the pen on the desk. It felt heavier than it should have. He signed his name, William. Prince of Wales, son, heir. His hand trembled as he set the pen down. The aide took the paper and left without a sound. Minutes later, the palace gates opened, not with ceremony, but with quiet resignation. The world had been waiting, and now it would know. Bells began to toll across the city, soft at first, then louder, spreading like ripples across water. One church, then another, then another. The sound rolled through London, through the countryside, through the nation. A sound of mourning, a sound of ending. When evening arrived, William prepared to address the nation. He wore a simple dark suit, refusing the formal robes his advisors suggested. When the cameras turned on, he looked directly into them and spoke as himself, not as a distant figurehead, but as a grieving son. I stand before you tonight having lost my father. The pain I feel is not unique to kings or princes. It belongs to anyone who has ever loved and lost. My father spent his entire life serving this nation with dedication I can only hope to match. Tonight, I honor his memory and thank you all for the compassion you have shown. His voice wavered slightly, betraying the emotion beneath his composed exterior. There were no grand promises, no rehearsed speeches, just honest words from an honest heart. As twilight painted the sky, William walked to the palace balcony. He pushed open the doors and stepped into the cool evening air. Below him, London stretched into the distance, lights beginning to twinkle as night gathered. Above, the sky blazed with gold and pink, the sun's final gift before darkness fell. He stood there for a long moment, between the world he had known and the world he was about to enter. The tragic development that emerged from Buckingham Palace just moments ago has reminded us all that beneath the crowns and ceremonies, the royal family experiences the same heartbreak that touches every family. King Charles III's journey, though marked by duty and dedication, ended as all human stories do, with those who loved him standing beside him, holding his hand one last time. William now carries forward not just a legacy of service, but a father's final words of wisdom, written in trembling handwriting, lessons about kindness and patience that will guide him through the years ahead. This story isn't just about a reign ending. It's about the moments that touch us all. Losing a parent, facing responsibilities we never felt ready for, and finding strength in those who stand by us. It's about heavy crowns, silent grief, and unfinished words. How will William carry his father's legacy? Share your thoughts below. If this moved you, like, subscribe, and
belonged to the Queen Mother. And in a tribute to Princess Diana, Kate wore this dazzling pair of earrings, made of rare South Sea pearls and suspended from a diamond drop.
Queen Elizabeth had made it clear that these precious jewels would be passed down to her children and grandchildren. But there was one notable exception. Prince William, as the next in line to the throne, would inherit a portion of these magnificent treasures. His wife, Kate, would have the privilege of wearing the jewels, some of the most coveted and priceless pieces in the world. Tensions rose as the implications of the Queen's decision began to sink in. Among the many pieces of jewelry, there was one that particularly caught the attention of the royal family, a necklace that had long been associated with the Queen's reign. It was a symbol of her power, her strength, and her unwavering commitment to the monarchy. Now, it would pass into the hands of the next generation, and the question lingered: how would this affect the future of the royal family? In addition to the jewels, the will contained other fascinating revelations. Queen Elizabeth's personal documents, her manuscripts, and even her unpublished book. These documents held secrets about the royal family that had never before been shared with the public. As Prince William flipped through the pages, he realized that these were not just ordinary family records. They were an intricate tapestry of the Queen's life and the history of the monarchy itself. Who would be entrusted with these priceless pieces of history? The question was far from simple. Some documents would remain sealed in the royal vault. while others would be passed on to her children and grandchildren. The weight of Queen Elizabeth's legacy was becoming increasingly clear. Her decisions, particularly in her final days, had shaped the future of the monarchy in ways that no one could have predicted. Now, as King Charles ascended to the throne, he would bear the full responsibility of continuing his mother's work.
He was born of royal blood, growing up a prince in the glare of the global spotlight that today shines even brighter. Here's King Charles III by the numbers.
The will made it clear that Charles would not only inherit the throne, but also the Queen's private estates, Sandringham and Balmoral. These were not public properties, but deeply personal places that had played a central role in the Queen's life. They would be passed down to Charles, ensuring that the private side of the royal family remained shielded from public scrutiny. It was clear that Queen Elizabeth's final wish had been to preserve the monarchy's future, even in the face of growing pressure and uncertainty. The jewels, the art, the documents, each piece held a story, a memory, and a lesson for the next generation. But perhaps the most significant decision was her trust in Charles to carry on her legacy. As monarch, he would be more responsible than ever before, with the weight of the monarchy's future resting on his shoulders. This was not just a will. It was a roadmap for the future of the royal family. Queen Elizabeth had crafted her legacy carefully, leaving behind a plan that would ensure the monarchy's survival, even as the world around it changed. The royal family, once a symbol of unwavering power, now found itself at a crossroads. The crown had shifted, but the true test of its strength would lie in the decisions made in the wake of the Queen's final wish. Prince William's role in the royal family was about to grow more significant than ever. As the future king, the responsibility for ensuring the monarchy's future would rest heavily on his shoulders. But what had led to his being chosen to read Queen Elizabeth's will? Was it his position as the eldest son? Or did the royal family want him to uncover something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface? The questions loomed as Prince William took his place in the historic moment. William, the firstborn son of Prince Charles and the late Princess Diana, had always been in the spotlight, even from a young age. His education was carefully chosen to prepare him for the future he would one day inherit. He attended Wetherby School in London, where he spent his early years, before moving on to Eton College. There, he was known not only for his academic achievements, but also for his athleticism and strong leadership qualities. His education continued at St. Andrews University in Scotland, where he studied geography, earning a degree that would not only equip him with knowledge of the world, but also help him understand the vast responsibilities awaiting him in the royal family. As he grew older, Prince William's life took a path shaped by duty, tradition, and service. In 2006, he followed in the footsteps of many members of the royal family by joining the British Army.
As I watch those extraordinary images, it does make me think of all the monumental and pioneering work of so many visionary environmentalists that have gone before.
He began his military career at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, where he was trained to be an officer. After completing his training, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Household Cavalry's Blues and Royals Regiment, following the tradition of military service that had defined his family for generations. However, William's military service wasn't limited to ceremonial duties. In 2009, he joined the Royal Air Force's Search and Rescue Force, a role that would see him serving on rescue missions across the UK. He showed a deep commitment to the lives of others, risking his own to help those in need, and this passion for service would later extend into his royal duties. During his time in the RAF, he quickly gained the respect of his colleagues for his dedication, professionalism, and leadership skills. But even as he thrived in the military, his future role in the royal family loomed on the horizon. As a member of the royal family, Prince William's public duties quickly expanded. He took on a range of charitable causes, dedicating himself to issues that resonated deeply with him. One of the causes close to his heart was mental health awareness. In 2016, he launched the Heads Together campaign alongside his brother, Prince Harry, and the Duchess of Cambridge, Kate Middleton.
It's to get people talking. The more we talk about mental health, the more normal the topic becomes.
Let's get our heads
The goal of the campaign was to reduce the stigma around mental health and encourage people to talk openly about their struggles. William's work in this area earned him praise, not just in the UK, but across the globe, for his willingness to speak candidly about his own struggles and his commitment to improving mental health support. In addition to mental health, William became increasingly involved in environmental sustainability, an issue that he felt passionately about. He supported various initiatives aimed at protecting the planet for future generations, focusing on wildlife conservation, climate change, and the importance of preserving natural habitats. His commitment to the environment was also evident in his role as the president of the Royal Foundation, where he helped lead efforts to address issues like climate change and conservation, collaborating with other members of the royal family and global organizations. Before his marriage to Kate Middleton, Prince William had already been given several royal titles. He was known as the Duke of Cambridge, a title bestowed upon him by Queen Elizabeth in 2011 on the occasion of his marriage. Along with the title, William also became the Earl of Strathearn in Scotland and Baron Carrickfergus in Northern Ireland. These titles symbolized his deep connection to the United Kingdom, reinforcing his role as a representative of the monarchy in all four nations. Prince William's marriage to Kate Middleton on April 29, 2011, was a moment of immense public interest, and their wedding was watched by millions around the world. The couple had been dating for several years before they became engaged in October 2010, and their relationship had always been one of great public attention.
She's been waiting in the wings for many years. Now Kate Middleton is to take center stage as William's princess and a future queen.
The royal wedding was not just a celebration of love, but also a symbol of continuity for the monarchy. As the new Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, William and Kate quickly became one of the most beloved couples in the royal family, with their shared dedication to service and charity. Beyond his duties as a royal, William's life had always been about finding balance. He was, after all, a man who had grown up under intense public scrutiny, and he had learned to navigate the complexities of his position with grace and humility. He had a deep sense of responsibility toward his family and his future role as king. But there was also the weight of tradition, a legacy that stretched back centuries, and the knowledge that his actions would influence the future of the monarchy. Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge, gained his title on April 29, 2011, the day he married Catherine Middleton.
We turn now to Prince William and his mission to end homelessness. The Prince of Wales is sharing a new documentary giving a behind-the-scenes look at the work he's been doing to change global perceptions.
Their wedding was not only a historic moment, but also marked the beginning of a new chapter for the royal family. Shortly after their marriage, the newlyweds embarked on a royal tour to Canada in 2011, which became a remarkable success. Their visit was hailed by the BBC, who praised their gestures, warmth, and ability to connect with the Canadian people. They were received with open arms as the royal couple took part in various events, from attending festivals to meeting with citizens, showing their commitment to their royal duties. William and Catherine's dedication to their roles was clear from the very start. Their visits together became a defining aspect of their lives, representing the future of the British monarchy. One significant event took place in 2012 when they visited Singapore and Malaysia for Queen Elizabeth II's Diamond Jubilee. Their participation in the celebrations showed their deep respect for the Queen and their understanding of the importance of the monarchy. This tour solidified their standing as global representatives of the royal family. In addition to royal tours, William marked another milestone in his public life, his first investiture ceremony. The occasion was a powerful moment where he took on more responsibilities as a member of the royal family, solidifying his future role in the monarchy. As the years passed, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge continued to travel together, each visit further strengthening their bond with the public. In 2014, they embarked on a royal tour of New Zealand with their son, Prince George. The visit was especially poignant, as it showcased their family unit to the world. The people of New Zealand welcomed the royal family with warmth and enthusiasm, and William and Catherine's genuine connection with the locals made the visit a resounding success. But their travels didn't stop there. Over the years, the couple visited a wide range of countries as part of their royal duties. One of the most historic trips took place in 2015, when Prince William became the first member of the royal family in 30 years to visit mainland China.
The British royal family to visit mainland China in nearly 30 years. Prince William is here to boost diplomatic and economic ties.
This groundbreaking trip was a diplomatic success, as it marked a significant step in strengthening relations between the United Kingdom and China. The visit was a milestone in Prince William's royal career, showing his ability to handle delicate matters of state with grace and diplomacy. In addition to their time in China, William and Catherine visited many other countries, continuing to expand their global presence. Their official visits included trips to Australia, India, Bhutan, Canada, and various European countries. Each visit was an opportunity for the couple to represent the British monarchy and foster diplomatic relations around the world. These trips were more than just ceremonial. They were a chance for the royal couple to engage with diverse cultures and connect with people from all walks of life. In 2019, Prince William and Catherine visited Pakistan, marking the first visit to the country by members of the royal family in over a decade. The visit was highly significant, as it strengthened the relationship between the United Kingdom and Pakistan. The royal couple received a warm welcome and made a real impact by meeting with local communities, discussing issues such as education and health. During this time, rumors began to surface that Prince William had contracted COVID-19, though he never showed symptoms in public. Reports suggested that William had self-isolated, following royal protocols, and continued to fulfill his royal duties remotely.
Britain's Prince William contracted COVID-19 in April at a similar time to his father, Prince Charles. That's according to The Sun newspaper, which reported on Sunday that William kept his diagnosis a secret to avoid alarming the nation.
Despite the challenges posed by the pandemic, the Duke remained committed to his responsibilities, participating in virtual events and supporting his family and the nation during a time of uncertainty. Throughout his career, Prince William continued to make significant contributions to the royal family. His efforts in raising awareness for mental health, protecting the environment, and supporting charitable causes further cemented his place as a modern and compassionate member of the monarchy. His work with organizations such as Heads Together and the Royal Foundation had a profound impact on the public, earning him admiration and respect. When Queen Elizabeth passed away in September 2022, it marked the end of an era. William, as the new Prince of Wales, inherited not only a title, but also a new level of responsibility. His dedication to the monarchy and his willingness to carry out his duties with dignity and compassion would define his role in the years to come. In the wake of the Queen's death, William and Catherine continued their royal duties, leading by example and carrying forward the legacy of service that had been instilled in them from a young age. They traveled extensively, representing the British monarchy with pride and commitment. From the Commonwealth countries to Europe, their visits were always marked by warmth, empathy, and respect for the cultures they encountered. In the years following Queen Elizabeth's passing, Prince William's efforts to strengthen the monarchy became more apparent. He and Catherine remained at the forefront of royal duties, showing their dedication to the causes that mattered most to them.
Following the news about their illnesses, both Kate and Charles took a break from their royal duties but have since returned to work. In September, the Princess of Wales shared a video on social media where she revealed she is doing what she can to stay cancer-free.
They worked tirelessly to support mental health initiatives, promote environmental sustainability, and champion charitable organizations. In addition to his charitable work, William continued to participate in significant state events. He delivered Queen Elizabeth's speech on her behalf during key moments, including important royal engagements and anniversaries. His ability to represent the monarchy with respect and honor was crucial in maintaining the public's faith in the royal family. Prince William's royal journey was marked by numerous milestones, each visit, speech, and royal duty contributing to the strengthening of the British monarchy. His relationship with Catherine remained a powerful symbol of modern royalty, grounded in duty, compassion, and service. As the new Prince of Wales, William's future in the monarchy was filled with promise, and his unwavering commitment to the royal family ensured that the monarchy would continue to thrive in the years to come. But what kind of relationship did he share with the Queen? So he was the one chosen to read her last wishes. The relationship between Queen Elizabeth and Prince William has always been one of mutual respect, trust, and deep importance for the future of the British monarchy. As the heir apparent, William's bond with his grandmother was built on a foundation of royal teachings, mentorship, and shared responsibility. It is no surprise that, in her final days, Queen Elizabeth entrusted him with the responsibility of reading her last wishes. To understand why this was so significant, we need to look deeper into their relationship and the way the Queen viewed William's role in the monarchy. Throughout William's life, Queen Elizabeth always gave him special attention. She saw in him not only a grandson, but the future of the royal family.
Conservationist, father, and future king. Prince William is Britain's most popular royal after his grandmother, the Queen.
As he grew older, she began to teach him the duties and expectations that came with being in line for the throne, lessons she had given to her son, Prince Charles, decades earlier. The Queen recognized that William, as the second in line to the throne, would one day take on responsibilities even greater than those of her own children, and she was determined to ensure he was well prepared. These teachings were critical, as they helped shape him into the man he is today, someone capable of handling the pressures of royal life with grace and dignity. Queen Elizabeth's relationship with Prince William was different from the one she shared with his brother, Prince Harry. Royal journalists have often commented that the Queen asked William to take on more involvement in royal duties, knowing that he was preparing to step into the spotlight as a future king. In contrast, Harry, while beloved by the Queen, was not seen as the same type of successor to the throne. The Queen's role as William's mentor was deliberate. She wanted to ensure he understood the weight of his future role and the importance of preserving the monarchy's stability. This, of course, created tension between William and Harry, who felt increasingly sidelined in his own royal role. The tension between the two brothers, William and Harry, became more pronounced as Harry's relationship with Meghan Markle became a central point of public focus. In the years leading up to their departure from royal duties,
what Harry and Meghan have announced is that they're going to step back from being senior royals, i.e., they're not going to be frontline members of the royal family anymore.
Harry's decisions and his outspoken nature caused friction with William. It was clear that the bond between the brothers had changed, and their differing paths began to highlight their contrasting views on royal duty. While William remained committed to the monarchy, Harry sought a more independent life, one that eventually led to his move to the United States with Meghan. The Queen, ever the observer of royal affairs, supported William through this difficult time. She saw in him the future of the monarchy, a future that she wanted to be bright and strong. Her loyalty to William was unwavering, and she believed he was the best person to carry the torch forward. Queen Elizabeth understood the challenges of the royal family, having lived through her own set of difficulties, including the public turmoil surrounding the marriage of her son Charles and Princess Diana.
All that mattered 32 years ago today, Prince Charles and Lady Diana. They married at the St. Paul's Cathedral in London.
She had witnessed firsthand the pressures that came with royal life, and she didn't want the same fate to befall her grandson. Queen Elizabeth was also deeply impressed by Kate Middleton, William's wife. The Queen welcomed Kate into the royal family with open arms, recognizing her poise, grace, and suitability for royal life. Unlike other royal marriages in the past, Queen Elizabeth was confident that Kate would be a stabilizing influence on William and a future queen who could help strengthen the monarchy. Royal author Andrew Morton shared with OK Magazine that the Queen saw something in Kate that she had not seen in others. She felt that Kate was the right partner for William, and this made her hopeful for the future of the monarchy. Kate's warm relationship with the Queen only deepened over time. As Kate became more involved in royal duties, her bond with Queen Elizabeth strengthened. The Queen appreciated Kate's ability to navigate royal life with such grace, and she knew that Kate was someone who would support William in his future role as king. The Queen also took the time to build a personal relationship with Kate's family, which further solidified her trust in the Duchess of Cambridge. The Queen saw Kate as a stable, grounded figure who would help William maintain his focus on his royal duties. Queen Elizabeth's satisfaction with William's choice of a wife was a significant moment in the history of the royal family. After the tumultuous years that had marked the earlier part of the royal family's modern history, especially the troubled marriage of Charles and Diana, the Queen was determined to make sure that the future of the monarchy would be different. She wanted William to have a happy and successful marriage, one that would provide stability for him as a future king and for the monarchy as a whole. Queen Elizabeth was thrilled to see William marry someone who would not only support him personally, but who would also help ensure the monarchy's success in the years to come. The Queen's happiness on William's wedding day in 2011 was palpable. She had always hoped for a bright future for her family, and seeing William marry Kate was a moment of joy for her. The Queen believed that with Kate by his side, William would have the strength to carry out his royal duties and ensure the monarchy's future. Her trust in their relationship was evident, and she expressed her hopes that their marriage would pave the way for a more harmonious future within the royal family. When Queen Elizabeth passed away in September 2022,
a few moments ago, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
It was clear that the torch had passed to William. The Queen had prepared him for this moment throughout his life, teaching him the values of duty, service, and responsibility. Her decision to ask William to read her last wishes was not only a symbol of her trust in him, but also a recognition of the vital role he would play in the future of the monarchy. She had always believed in William's ability to lead, and in her final moments, she made it clear that he was ready to carry on her legacy. The Queen's support for William was not just personal, it was also strategic. She knew that his leadership, along with Kate's support, would help the monarchy evolve and remain relevant in the modern world. Queen Elizabeth's decision to pass on her royal teachings to William, her trust in his wife, and her hopes for their future together were all part of her plan to ensure that the monarchy would continue to thrive in the generations to come. Hope you enjoyed the video.